my goodness. This is the first TWIS podcast broadcast of 2024. It's very exciting. I know we're off our normal schedule, but we're here, and it's so exciting to have Justin and Blair back for the show. I hope everyone who is in the chat right now is ready to go. And of course, remember, hit the likes, the thumbs ups, the notifications, the subscribes, share with all your friends on all the social media that you have scattered about to. And, if we have to edit stuff, things will be edited for the podcast, but this is the whole shebang. Are you ready to go?
Let's do it.
That was so well timed, synchronized. You guys are good. All right. Dun, 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 dun. See if we remember how to do all this. Starting the show in 3, 2. This is TWIS. This Week in Science, episode number 955, recorded on Tuesday, January 9th, 2024. TWIS Top 11 Science News of 2023. Year in Review. Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Kiki, and today we're going to fill your heads with a list full of the best science from 2023. But first...
Disclaimer. The following program is an incomplete version of reality in which we are living. All non-science related foolishness, fictitious nonsense has been removed so that we may present you with only the interesting, factual nonsense the past year has had to offer. In short, science. In longer terms, science! And the year past has had a lot of it, so let's take a tight 90 dive into some of this year's top 11 subjects here on This Week in Science, coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind that can't get enough. I want to learn everything. I want to fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I want to know what's happening, what's happening, what's happening this week in science. What's happening, what's happening, what's happening this week in science.
Good science to you, Kiki and Blair.
And a good science to you too, Justin, Blair, and everyone out there. Welcome to another episode of This Week in Science, the first episode of 2024, which is really the last episode of 2023 because that's what we are reviewing today. We're going to go back and reminisce. Yeah, a little reminiscence. But right now, though, I just want to state the extremely obvious. We've got the whole TWIS crew together for the first time in several months. And so I just want to express a little gratitude for getting you two back together here with me so that we can have a really fun show.
Yay, so excited to be here.
Welcome back. I mean, even if it is just today, I don't know what we're doing. Like I said in our Discord.
Figure it out.
Yeah, we're a hot mess, but we're going to make it.
Time same bat channel later on this week.
We're working through it. We'll make it go.
We're good. We're fine.
Yeah, we're all good. Okay, so this week, yes, is our annual review of the year that we have just left. It's our review show, and as we review, we're going to be not doing the top 10, but the top 11 big topics of 2023. And why do we do this, Justin?
Well, we could have gone two ways when we first were thinking about doing a top 10 list, which is, well, the thing when you get to the end of a top 10 list is, what was number 11? What's the one on the cusp? We want to know that one too. We want all the information. The other way we could have gone is that, well, let's just do a top 9 list, and that way the 10 can be a mystery and people can fill in their own. But we ended up going the way where we did the more information thing and the less rather than the less. So you're going to get a top 11 stories from 2023 today. And Kiki, you're muted. I can't hear a word you're saying.
Because I was typing, and this is just, par for the course. Any other things, Blair, that you want to add?
I'm so excited to hear about the top 11 stories because I've been living in an alternate dimension of diapers and crying and all these things. And so I missed a lot of the science this year too. So this is a review for me as well.
It's because you're busy doing your
really
own
look forward to
science
hearing.
experiment. Yes.
Yeah. What happened in science this year? So catch me up, buddies.
It's a big catch up for all of us. Catch up. Okay. As we jump in the show here today, I do want to remind all of you that if you would like to, you can help us out a lot by subscribing to This Week in Science. You can subscribe to us on all the places we live stream weekly. That's Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. Or you can find us on your favorite podcast platform. Look for This Week in Science, also TWIS. And we are on a bunch of the socials. TWIS Science is what we're usually at. So go look around and see where you can find us. But our website, as always, is twis.org. And you can find out all sorts of information there and get links to stories and show notes for every episode. Dun, dun, dun. But now it's time for reviewing the science. Are you ready?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
it's been a while since we've done one of these, and I can't remember. Do we start with the top story or the bottom story? Do we start with 11 and count down to 1? I can't even remember. It's been a year.
Count down. You're starting with number 11.
11 this year is a funny one. It's, we were just going over these and Justin mentioned, there's this thing that we kept having on the countdown in previous years called COVID, but it's not really in the countdown this year because it's just, there's nothing new. It's still there. It is still there actually, but it's
actually
there's not a lot of science coming out about it.
There's a big old wave right now. Yeah, but
related to that, because of the massive forced experiment that was COVID, we saw a bunch of stories this year related to workplace science. And so because so many of us had to work from home suddenly and without notice and try to find some way to still get our jobs done, because that's what's important, I guess. Anyway, there's all these science
end stage capitalism. Yeah.
That are related to what happened to all of us as a result of that crazy social experiment. And so there were stories on both sides. Everybody's got to go back to work. Everybody's got to stay home, all this sort of stuff. But so as an example of that, there was a whole story from Stanford economists saying that return to office is dead. Basically, a lot of people didn't go back to work ever. And so there's all this new technology being developed, and they predict that a lot of people are going to continue to work from home for the future. Meanwhile, there were also stories about what that does to you. So there was a piece of research that came out about your neural signaling based on Zoom meetings, which, if anybody listening has spent a lot of time on Zoom in meetings, you can kind of go into this stupor almost, like you don't quite fall asleep, but you kind of sort of phase out. There's science about that. So your neural signaling is different when you're in a Zoom meeting than when you're in an in-person meeting.
Yeah.
And then to cap it all off, one of my favorite stories of the year was actually that if you just reduce people down to a 4-day work week, not increase the length of their days, you just give them a 4-day work week, you delete one of those days, they get the same amount of work done and their quality of life improves. So I wish that more people would see that story. I think that's a pretty important thing, especially because we talked on the show when we brought this story forward about how also that would benefit the economy if that's what you're worried about, because if people have more leisure time, they actually spend more money.
Right.
So, But it's neat to see kind of the workplace science coming to the forefront and starting these conversations. And who knows, maybe there will be changes in the future to how we do work, at least in the United States, where there's this kind of standard Monday through Friday 9 to 5 thing.
Yeah. Yeah. There was also a story at the end of the year that Tom Merritt brought when he guest hosted the show with me, related to the commutes that people are making. There's a bunch of traffic on the roads, but nobody really knows why, because not as many people are back to work. So commute times are still long. The freeways are still crowded, but not as many people are going back to office or aren't going back as many days per week. So nobody really knows what's going on.
Oh, well,
Maybe it's they're going to cafes and going shopping. I don't know.
yeah, there's some of that maybe, but there's also there's a swelling, a sort of backlog of lack of growth that took place during the pandemic, where the U.S. economy is adding hundreds of thousands of jobs where people are going to work at new jobs. And so what we actually are looking at is actually a very critical lack of infrastructure, where a lot of people are still working from home, and yet the traffic is not any better. It just means that as soon as everybody's going to an office, if that ever happens, there won't be enough road for all the cars. That's all. It just means traffic has gotten worse. We didn't build roads during that's what they should have done. Hey, now that nobody's using any of these roads, we should do all of our expansion projects that we've been planning and talking about and making.
But then who works on those expansion projects?
People who are working outdoors.
People who work.
Hardy people. Strong people.
But this also, I think this topic now brings us to our number 10.
10.
Yes. 10. Climate hope, which is that this last year, actually, Justin, you reported on a couple of concrete stories, which would kind of relate to the building of roads, the buildings that we build. Concrete is a huge emitter of carbon dioxide. How do we make it more sustainable? How do we make it better so it lasts longer? One story, researchers they determined the methodology for creating Roman concrete, which is self-healing. So there was a large amount of heat involved, but if we want to make self-healing concrete that lasts longer, so we don't have to rebuild stuff as often, using that Roman idea or what the technology, the methodology they used as a starting point, it could bring us to better building materials.
Yeah, like you can still go see the Colosseum.
Yeah.
It was a couple thousand years ago or something. It was like a really long time that thing's been standing. The lifespan, expiration date on most concrete buildings built today is about 100 to 150 years. And then it's going to start just crumbling into dust.
But also along those lines, there is a new methodology that chemists have cracked as well to make carbon neutral concrete, which is very exciting. So that's also in addition to that. So we have the Roman concrete, which is an old technique that could help us make better, stronger, longer lasting stuff. But maybe it could be combined with the carbon negative methodology that researchers at Washington State University have come out with. And so it's made out of biochar and can suck up 23% of its weight in carbon dioxide from the air. And then additionally, in terms of roadways, electric vehicles really made an advancement this year. There was quite a movement in just generally more car dealers starting to offer electric vehicles. We had the passing of the infrastructure bill that is going to be focused on hydrogen for the economy, but it's also going to focus on infrastructure development, like you said. So there will be hopefully better electrical grids. We had lithium air batteries, which are going to be better for storage of electricity. So some of these sustainable wind farms and solar projects will be able to actually store more energy for the grid better and more safely. Our devices with these batteries may last longer and not need to take as much energy. It could allow cars to charge faster, go further distances, and there are all sorts of benefits to these new batteries that are being developed. And then
But the critical thing you hit on there is that
Mhm.
the grid.
Mhm.
And I hate pointing this out because I love the electric car. I'm a big fan. But it is using electricity that is, by and large, still generated the old-fashioned way. There are parts of the United States where if you have an electric car, you're driving on coal. There are
Absolutely.
parts.
But there are fewer coal power plants now, and additionally, photovoltaic solar power has become a huge part of our energy infrastructure, and sustainable energies are starting to really make an impact. And that was actually one of the stories this year, is that we kind of flipped. There was a flipping point, and sustainable energies actually started to even out or overtake even some of the input from coal.
Yeah,
So
and
it's
one of
good.
the things
But you
that
also have to
really,
make sure that the grid can support everything going on, because we also,
Absolutely.
as you just mentioned, people are working from home, running multiple computers, which take more energy than many households were built to suck before. And then you also have a car being charged on the same home, and all these, appliances. Some of them take more energy than they ever did before, and so there is a potential to
oh no,
stress out a grid
appliances are
that wasn't quite
getting
created for
better.
this.
Well,
Some
so
appliances are much better.
yeah,
Some
like
appliances
your
are more
car
taxing.
has basically replaced your refrigerator. This is the biggest energy suck of the house. I mean, I think
Right,
those
but also because of
might
climate
not
change,
be
some homes have
completely
air
equal.
conditioning that never had it before, and all sorts of
Yeah.
other things going on, right?
But we
So this,
also have more people installing heat pumps in there instead of air conditioners in their houses. We also have, because of the capacity of electric vehicles and more houses being set up to have electric vehicles can potentially also act as batteries to generate power for the house in the case of a time for power need. So the
Well, that's
cars,
the whole thing that with
that's a whole thing that could be
the
great.
Tesla wall, which has
Yeah.
been around for a while. But
Yeah, the power
the idea
wall.
is taking all of the energy storing capacity of these giant lithium batteries and
Yeah,
using them to draw energy off peak hours,
exactly.
which
So
is energy that's cheaper, but it's also because that energy is largely getting wasted
yeah,
if it's unused. So
but I feel like this year, and even though the latest UN COP meeting, wasn't extremely inspiring. Part of it, not NASA partnered with a bunch of groups to launch the U.S. Greenhouse Gas Center to share climate data, and so they have a website that will allow people and organizations to be able to understand exactly where carbon dioxide is coming from. It uses all the satellite data from NASA and puts it into a form that is usable by organizations who are trying to help fight climate change and help us do better around the globe. So we can actually start understanding more about what's happening with the climate, when, and exactly what's happening. So we could potentially understand more fine details about where carbon dioxide is being emitted and where it's coming from at certain times of day, certain times of the year, certain places around the world. And I really think this, all of this comes together as kind of it gives me hope. It
yeah,
makes me optimistic, more
yeah.
optimistic than the doom and gloom news that's like everything's getting hotter. It's like, yeah, okay,
Yeah,
we got
I
that.
mean,
But there's a lot of cool stuff going on.
there is, and it's good that it's happening because, of course, 2023, hottest year on record.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
I mean,
what?
yes,
Again?
we
Again.
need
Yeah.
the good to happen because the bad didn't stop.
Yeah, and I'm gonna take with me this my favorite year. This is one of my favorite stories from the year. Butterfly-inspired molecular paint that basically takes light and it's not pigment based. It's molecules that are grown and they're like calcium based, but the molecules they're what they call plasmonic paint, and it reflects light in a way that can lead to cooling, is lighter weight than paint, is more environmentally friendly in its development than pigment paints. And this kind of technology is really the kind that's going to this is one of the things. It's one of the things in our toolkit stepping toward the future of hope and doing things well. Yeah. I don't know. Were there any other hopeful things out there? I think, though, we're coming on to what? Number 9? Is it time for number 9? Justin?
Yeah. What's number 9? I don't even can't see the. Is that the synthetic biology? Where are we at?
Yeah, synthetic biology.
So this is really a tricky one this year because I focused a lot of attention this year on medical. And we have a medical section. A lot of that medical section comes from genomics, but we have a genomics section, and a lot of that genomic section comes from AI, but we have an AI section. So it's hard to like synthetic biology. It's hard to even find where I can start or end that conversation without hitting all three of the others. Like one of the things that and this is going to touch on other stories all throughout, is our ability to engineer a protein. Mm-hmm. Which again, we've used AI to even do, not just predict what a protein could do, but AI is now allowing us to take the function of a protein and back engineer how to design a protein to have that function, which means we can then, touching the medical, reach druggable, previously undruggable diseases with drugs that are specifically designed to target them. At some point, this is, to me, this is artificial biology. This is a synthetic manipulation and creating things within the body. Yeah. Proteins, of the tens of thousands of proteins that are in the body through different methods of coming together and splicing apart and having different functions. We're now creating functions at that molecular level that we can put to work. We're turning that corner from technology to tool.
Right. And historically, like we've tried to mess around with bacteria, microbes, and it's like, oh, maybe we can make oil-eating bacteria, give them a gene, and you start with the function, create the protein or the gene and put it into their genome, and there you go. Yeah.
And now we're getting to the point where like, do we need the microorganism? We can just produce the enzyme ourselves. Right. To go direct. And then, of course, how do you get a lot of enzyme? Well, you use a microbe to make it. But you don't have to apply the microbe to the source that you're trying to affect. So it reminds me of the medical industry, pharmaceutical industry, which for most of its existence would try to go find a plant and extract something from it. And this became a medicine. And now we're just like, well, we'll come up with whatever protein that we want. We'll slap it into a Chinese ovary cell and produce it at massive scales. And now we can reach. We don't have to comb through the Amazon to find this plant and then cultivate enough of it to render it right. Now we can just almost at will manufacture whatever small molecule we need. And now we're just starting to hone in on unlocking the complete toolkit of being able to engineer a small molecule for every need within the body.
Yeah.
And it's good. This is this is not going to be the year of, and I see I'm already skipping subjects again. I'll talk about it more in the medical.
But you also, this last year, I think, reported on the evolution of a minimal cell. Well, researchers like evolved in the lab like a cell with the minimum number of genes required for life, and they evolved it down, and like in 300 days, less than a year, they were able to create that. Towards the end of the year, there was also engineered yeast. So it's an ongoing project where they've been trying to basically synthetically engineer the yeast genome, make chromosomes and figure out which chromosomes are important for yeast and not important for their survival. And they got down to removing basically 50% of the yeast genome, and the yeast are still surviving. They've been doing that, by crossbreeding yeast cells back and forth, taking out chromosomes, putting chromosomes back in, and just seeing what's needed and what's not. And then there was also stem cell research where for the first time, they've been taking human stem cells. I think they just took like, skin cells or something like that, turned them into stem cells. And then they took those stem cells, turned them into human embryos. So they're like, now we have an organoid that is like an embryo, but it doesn't have all the stuff for an embryo, but we can do developmental tests on it. And so it's using all these lab techniques to, like you said, like really figure out a bunch of the questions that we've been asking for so long.
Yeah, I mean, we're even down to the point where, okay, there's a protein that we've been trying to target as with drugs. That's really hard to reach. It doesn't have good binding sites, and it's like there's one. It's actually this year, I guess, but it's just barely into this year. There's a protein associated with elevated levels are associated with Parkinson's disease, and they haven't been able to target this protein because it's just doesn't. It's I can't remember what they call it exactly. It's like amorphous, or like it doesn't keep the same structure necessarily. It's a little bit of a rogue. It's not, they're not very standardized, and the binding sites aren't good. So we've failed at having a consistent ability to target this. Well, there's a group that just came up with a technique that says, why even bother with the protein? What we're going to do is we're going to create a small molecule that can bind and degrade the mRNA that encodes for the protein later. Right? So now they're reducing the numbers of the mRNA that become the protein and reducing it before it's even the protein that's hard to target. So like we're like even those things that we're now unlocking the abilities to conquer, we were figuring out that with that toolkit, we don't even need to fight the monster, right? We can just go crack the monster eggs. We can go down to the bottom of the ocean and smack those Godzilla eggs or whatever before we even have to fight the big monsters. So we're
I would not recommend doing that by the way, but that sounds like a great way to start the monster movie, but okay.
Out of practice, I admit. But we finally have the technology to take on some of these diseases that have persisted, that we've had no answer to. Yeah. And just as we're going to target them in the way that we expected we would, we find actually we can do this even better. Like, we can prevent the disease from even manifesting. We can prevent it from getting to the stage where we're treating a symptom. We can actually prevent the causals or the associated in that one, at least with the elevated levels. But
but I'm going to do the caveat.
Really an incredible time.
Yeah, I think the caveat here, though, is like this is where the research is at, and what we're going to see in the next years is the possibility of this going from animal testing to human testing, and really seeing if these treatments are going to work more and more often. But yeah, it's like taking the synthetic stuff, and this is like where we're seeing a phase shift, right? Where it'll start being more applied and more understanding in the future.
Yeah, and again, this is more for the medical side that's coming later, but this is why medical rated so high this year, because exactly what you're explaining. Like, there's how many phases to a clinical trial? Like 3 or 4 or something like this. And each one, half or 60, 70% of whatever they're trying fails as you move up through the clinical trial process. So the ones that even make it to the end are such a small percentage of where you started. But these tools that we are now using are so targeted that I think what you're going to see is
more success.
We did this one technique and it worked. And now we actually have a cure for 4 diseases because this method can be used for any of them that have this particular protein structure that needs to be targeted. Because now if we can hit the mRNA before it's even a protein, that's always been our big challenge, is finding the thing that will target, the thing that will bind, and the thing that will affect it, moderative change in the levels of these proteins wherever they are in the body, doing whatever work that we don't want them to do, or increase numbers that we want them to do. Now we're behind. We're a step before that. So then all that trial and error part doesn't even come up.
That's why it's the robots, it's the AI, it's that it's all more targeted. Exactly.
But this year was a continuous stream of proof of concept that we've got that technology in hand now. And so I think this year and next year, like you're saying, the years to come, we're going to see those applications tested through clinical trials, and hopefully in the next few years cure all diseases. Something.
Yeah, and
completely getting within grasp.
Save the environment with synthetic bacteria, whatever. It's all going to be good. It's great news. We're doing good things. But we're also looking at the world around us. So number 8 is
biology, which is a pretty large term here. But this is an area where we found out some really interesting things, like that the sea star is all head. I was looking at this story. This happened while I was out. Sea stars, they have bilateral symmetry, which a lot of people don't realize. They think it's like a 5-pointed star that's symmetrical in 5 parts, like radial symmetry. No, it's bilaterally symmetrical because there's a mouth, there's an anus, there's an intake. I forget what it's called now. All my years at the aquarium have lost me. But there's the intake on the top of it where the water. It's not a siphon where the water goes in. Anyway, it's bilaterally symmetrical. So a lot of bilaterally symmetrical things have a head. So researchers wanted to find out, where's the starfish's head? And they found out that it's more like they have 5 heads. So,
wow.
Yep. There you go. The gene signatures associated with head development are everywhere in juvenile sea stars. Expression of genes that code for the animal's torso and tail sections missing. So they're pretty much a true 5 head, I suppose. We also found out more mammals fluoresce than we thought before. But we were talking about this earlier. This is like, this story keeps happening.
Yeah.
Oh, this mammal fluoresces. So now you have to ask that question. It's that chicken and egg question of like, do they fluoresce because wow, my Siri's talking to me. Shush.
They fluoresce because of Siri?
Do they fluoresce because they're trying to do a signal of some sort, or is it just a byproduct of the molecules that their hair is made out of? Like, what's happening? Who knows? Anyway, so there was that one, and then more about what's going on in seawater. What was this one all about?
Oh, the
seawater soup, Kiki.
Yeah. So this one was toward the end of the year, but I thought it was a super interesting story. Is that there's just a ton of genetic information in seawater, that there are these extracellular vesicles. So we've talked about, how many microbes are
Environmental
in
DNA.
yeah, but we've talked about like how many microbes are in a drop of seawater before, but it's not just those microbes. It's actually like the microbes are using extracellular vesicles to send mRNA, DNA, to each other and share information. And so really it's
Wow.
not just the microbes, it's you're swimming in genetic soup. So it's
Right, and it's not
Yeah.
it's not really an accident. It's
No.
part of
part of the process.
sea life processes. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Not
Yeah.
just whoops, my DNA's everywhere. Nope.
Yeah. Oopsies.
There was
Wow,
also an
that's
interesting
awesome.
thing in zebrafish where they discovered there is a method that is used in cells to send activators to other cells. It's these little tubulars
Mm.
that go out and extend, and they don't quite know how they hand them off yet. But they've witnessed the extensions of these little tubulars where they're sending stuff to other cells that will activate processes in those cells. It's a form of cellular communication and activation of processes in other cells that
Mhm.
hasn't been seen before, that they didn't know existed, which is like, now you have to redo the textbook. This is an added intracellular communication pathway that they just hadn't been able to see previously.
Yeah,
Very
and
cool.
there's more of that as well. Similarly, the exclusome, which is
I was gonna ask you about this.
yeah, researchers. It's kind of like I don't know. It's an organelle. They're thinking it's an organelle, but it's made up of DNA rings known as plasmids, and it's a compartment in mammalian cells. It's in the cell plasma, but nobody's ever really identified it in specifically in the literature because it's like DNA are in the chromosomes and it's in the nucleus, but this is
Mhm.
DNA in plasmids in the cell plasma. So, yeah, so they
Do I
don't
say
really
it? Do I say it?
say it.
Rewrite the textbooks,
There we
people.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah,
We also added a
exosomes,
new
exciting.
organelle. There's a phosphate storage organelle. Or is that
Oh,
this one? Is this? No, this is a different
no,
one.
it's not. It's different. Yeah.
Yeah, this is different. But they found an organelle that they just thought, looking under the microscope for all these years, looking at cells, it's this, here's this thing that it's like a little bubble. That's all.
Well,
That's all it is.
so you see organelles and you see cells in a textbook and everything's
Yeah.
different colors and it's very
Yeah.
clear what different
Yeah.
things are. But when you look at cells under a microscope, it's all kind of the same color and it's kind of blurry and you're like,
Yeah.
is this a bubble or is this an organelle? I just
And
don't, is that just a little bit of goop or is that a new thing?
What is
And
it
the thing
doing?
is,
Yeah.
too, it's not always full. So sometimes it is a bubble. But it's a like a backup storage system for phosphates, which I guess is like part of the energy component of a cell. That when the cell is stressed and the resources are low, it'll send some to this organelle. It's sort of like, okay, here's our long-term storage. Here we're gonna throw everything into the bank here so that we can then use it sparingly coming out of this organelle. But if everything's great and you've got a nice medium and your cells are fully fed and they're happy, it's empty because it doesn't need it. So this
Man,
thing has been hiding in plain sight this whole time. You just had to have the right conditions to see it active. But
that's what it all is. Yeah. Right. How to see it, the right tools to
Yeah.
see it, and then the right conditions to see it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Hmm.
I don't
And then
know.
we also completely upended our understanding of how purring in cats works.
I know.
That's pretty weird. It's like it feels like it's a less active process than we thought it was, and there's a whole physiological piece of the puzzle that hadn't really been noticed before, a fold in the larynx, which is really interesting.
Yeah, and there was other
Oh.
stuff related to cats as well, like phylogenomics that analyzed cats' anal secretion glands and found out that the different scenting that cats do is based on the microbes in those glands, and they've started determining like the microbes that live in the cat anal sacs.
Oh, and they also
Super fun.
discovered that kids that have cats have more than double the risk of developing schizophrenia.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good old
More than
Toxo.
double. Good
Yeah.
old
Yay,
toxoplasma gondii
Toxo.
exposure. It
That's
turns out that according to that study, the negative effects associated with toxo and connected to schizophrenia
And not good with dementia either. So if you've
and dementia as well
they
are
found
likely tied to
correlated.
developmental stage exposures.
Boy.
So if you're later in life, you get a cat, that toxo thing might not be as effective on you as if as when you had a cat as a kid, but haven't had one since. You might still be more negatively impacted.
Keep your cats indoors. All right.
Yes,
moving
keep
on.
your cats, little bird murderers. Yes.
How about number 7? Are we ready for number 7?
Yes, we are ready for number 7, which is astronomy this year. Yes. Lots going on in astronomy. We had several stories throughout the year related to mapping the universe. So there was a report back in February where scientists released a map of the universe based on the Dark Energy Survey and the South Pole Telescope. And they found that the universe is more clumpy than we thought it was. There were maps that were released later in the year of objects and dark matter in the universe. The Gaia exploration found that they had really neat lenses from core clusters that were bending light or slowing it down, speeding it up so that they could see things differently. But so they were mapping basic thermodynamics, galaxies, stars themselves. That was later in October. Let's see what else. There were looking at pulsars. They were able to determine a very low frequency rumble that our universe is humming at. There's the gravitational radiation of our universe, and that's all based on pulsar timing. And that was like a 15-year-long study that was able to put that data together finally. And as they look at it more and more, we'll probably be able to understand more about the gravitational wave ocean that we exist in within space-time. Then toward the end of the year, LIGO, our favorite interferometer for gravitation, looking at the gravitational waves of the universe. LIGO has managed to make its measurements more sensitive in what they surpassed the quantum limit. So they are able to fine-tune either the amplitude or the frequency of their lasers to be able to highlight different frequencies within that ocean of gravitational waves, big long waves, low frequency or higher frequency waves that they need to be looking at in different amplitudes. So there's a lot of mapping and looking at stuff that's going on.
Also, there was a study that proved once again, because this had been illustrated back in the 60s, but re-looked at all the data, all the informatics, all the metrics, and discovered that, in fact, women make much more efficient astronauts. And in fact, they dialed it. They
should be all women. Yeah,
they should be all women and probably 5'2". So that tall, stocky astronaut that we remember seeing the right stuff, all wrong. That's not what you want. That's really not what they take up too much space, uses too much energy, required too much dehumidifying and deheating and reheating. They're just complete energy wasters in space. But a woman about 5'2", perfectly suited for space. They just need to make the suits her size.
Right. So speaking of going to space, where are we going to go? India put a lander on the moon. Yeah, ULA. I mean, this just happened. Before the end of the year, they launched a test mission for us to be going back to the moon, and then just yesterday, right? Yesterday, they launched another one and to go to the moon and take a lander to the moon. There seem to be some problems, however, but we can talk about that one later because that's 2024, not 2023. But we're trying to go to the moon. It's all good. We'll get there eventually.
Did we find somewhere to go there yet? Don't we have to build somewhere to go before we go there? Like I feel
robots.
like
we're just sending the robots. It's all robots, not people.
Why don't you go to the cold desert? Oh, what's going to be there? Cold desert.
Cold.
Or hot, depending. It's
what? It depends.
Stop going to space. Go to the ocean. Can I make a call for the top stories of 2024? Hey, science community, I would like the top 20 stories of 2024 to include ocean exploration next year. Can we attempt for that?
I'm going to just leave out the sensational sub implosion. Anyway,
that's
so. Wait, last year that is what we're talking about.
You know what? You know what I heard? Do you know what I heard about that though? I did hear some information that might be critical. I heard it was orcas.
Oh jeez.
I heard it was orcas.
That's right. We could have talked about ocean oopsies in the top 11. We'll talk about it later. It's fine.
Later. Okay. There was ALMA, which is another the Atacama Large Millimeter Submillimeter Array found.
They really need to make up their mind.
they found
large or is it submillimeter? You can't be both.
It's all of it. But anyway, they looked at a disk around a star, V883 Orionis, and they found gaseous water in that disk. And so they confirmed that they can trace the origins of water in our solar system to before the formation of our sun, that basically water has come from the interstellar medium over time, which is pretty incredible. Researchers also looked at a galaxy that they've been checking out for a while, a relic galaxy, NGC 1277, and they didn't think it had interacted with its neighbors very much, but no dark matter. Why doesn't it have any dark matter? Usually when the dark matter is missing or whatever, there's been some kind of interaction and the mass has been stripped away. But anyway, they have a puzzle there, a galaxy with no dark matter. And then we can talk about the sample return stuff. This year we had researchers looking at rocks from Ryugu, the asteroid JAXA's Hayabusa 2 spacecraft returned in 2020. And so now this recent study was able to determine that the isotopes within this bit of asteroid that were brought back had a lot of carbon-13, silicon carbide, and pre-solar grains, which, so before the sun again. So Ryugu, what came from interstellar dust and gas and stuff from, I don't know, stuff floating around. And now at the end of the year, we had the Bennu return. NASA's Bennu asteroid came back, and they've been checking it out. And in checking it out, they've determined that there's a lot of carbon and water, and it's very successful so far, giving us an estimation of what the asteroids in our universe contain. What they got there? What you got there, asteroids? But anyway, we have some successes. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see what happens in 2024. Space is awesome. Astronomy, generally pretty great this last year. So let's move on to number 6.
6.
What's number 6? I don't have my countdown is backwards.
Justin, why don't you have the spreadsheet?
I have the spreadsheet. Oh, you know what? Now I have it. I was looking in the wrong place. I was still looking at the
I'm like waiting.
human evolution.
Yeah,
Woohoo.
he's with it.
Yeah.
We didn't find out anything about human evolution this year.
Not
no, we found out lots.
Okay. That'd be weird if we put it on the countdown.
I don't know. It's number 6, but we got nothing.
Goodness gracious. There is wooden structures that were found in North Africa that look like they were, one part of this big timber was carved to fit another part of this big timber on it. It was found deep underground, so it was preserved. It's about 400,000 years old. It's older than we thought current modern humans should be. It's in the wrong place for Neanderthals to be. We don't know who made it, but it indicates structure out of wood, much older than previously thought. And we've talked a bunch of times about all the strange places that hominins have ended up. And the only thing that would account for a lot of it is if they had boats.
Yeah.
Of some sort of flotation boats. And the problem with that is we don't have any evidence of it because apparently they didn't make them out of stone. so they deteriorated. Well, I'm sure somebody
them out of
tried to
wood,
make
right?
a stone boat.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they didn't get
Wood,
too far.
bronze. Yeah.
But there's islands. I think is it Crete or one of the islands off of Greece where they know Neanderthals were, but they also know that there was never a way to get there by foot. There's all of the Oceania islands, a bunch of them that never could have been reached by foot. Places all over the world where these sort of strange poppings up, but finding crafted wood structure 400,000 years old before any of the people that we even contemplated could have been playing around with a boat.
Right.
Really, really an interesting find. There was a bunch of Neanderthal stuff. I'm not going to bore you with the details. Understanding that Neanderthals were always much smarter than we thought they were. And then there's actually, it's a recent study, but it's suggesting that Neanderthals and humans might have only split 400,000 years ago.
Right. That we're more closely related than we thought. That Neanderthals might have come back to Africa and then remixed and then we left, or I don't know.
So this whole thing that I was talking about at some point in the year earlier, that Neanderthals might not be, that the Denisovans might not be, the hybrids between Denisovan and Neanderthal. It might just be that we thought the wrong one was the hybrid. That the Neanderthal could be the Homo erectus modern human hybrid. And because we found it first, we called it a donkey and then kept finding mules everywhere. Oh, this is half this and it's half something else.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
If that timeline holds to about the 400,000 year, then the Denisovan side of things is much older. But there's DNA evidence within Neanderthal that says it's older also, which would make sense if it was a hybrid, and that some of its origin was much more ancient and more diverse from humans. So anyway, that's going to be a fascinating one to be tracking. Also, there was
without getting into a whole thing.
We can.
I mean, I didn't get to be part of this conversation at the time. As I think we need to start looking at humans as a ring species. Which everybody just look it up. We'll talk about it later. But it's when basically adjacent communities can interbreed, but if you take communities from far geographically away, they cannot. So even though there's there's relation. So like the California tiger salamander is like the textbook version of a ring species, because ones from neighboring counties can interbreed, but if you take one from Northern California and Southern California, they cannot create viable offspring. But so they're all the same species, but they have these distinct groups. So there's something there too, that you could have proximity over thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years, where you could have this kind of constant interbreeding happening, but then there's genetic dissimilarities on other parts of the world. I don't know. It's just something that I think would be really interesting to look at.
Yeah, and I think that is I think there's evidence for it in a way that we won't talk about today too, that suggests that, because the further the distance you get away, there's possibly larger hormonal differences.
Yeah, but wasn't there also a study related to climate having had an impact on the distribution of humanoid ancestors?
Yeah, the earliest humans,
it was like a new
hominins that would have been over 1 million years, that were pre even Homo erectus, that would have been in Europe, all died out because of extreme climate, and so there was already a replacement. Now there was also a tremendous amount of study that revealed the populating of Europe over different time frames, some suggesting current modern humans got there much earlier, and also showing that the population that of out of Africa into Europe didn't make it, and then there was an out of Africa into Europe that didn't make it, and then there was a out of Africa into the Caucasus into Europe that did, and there was very little overlap, a lot less overlap of these different groups than they expected to find in some places. So the human origin stories are continuing to be fascinating, and of course there was some further confirmations, I think, that were made in terms of the age of the Americas.
Right.
It's one of those things, like it shouldn't be surprising, because the pyramids in South America are thousands of years older than the pyramids in Egypt. It's not that the data hasn't been there for a while, staring us all in the face. The origins of the Native Americans, North and South, date back much further than anything that we have examples of current modern human populations in Europe or Asia.
And there's some suggestions also that because of the way the ice ages and glaciation and maybe use of boats and other things along coastlines worked, that humans started in Eastern Asia, and then they wandered across to North America, and then maybe they wandered back to Eastern Asia, then maybe they went back to North America, and then maybe also there was activity going across the southern oceans to South America. So
actually, but that one is interesting
questions.
Too. That one's interesting too, because the suggestion of that also has a timeline wrong. Because there's these interesting things that they find in the Hawaiian Islands where there's words for boats, and they're using redwood. They're using drift redwood, and they call that goodwood to make boats out of. And they call them something that's very similar to the Native American terms along the coasts of California. But what's interesting there is that those boats and those words existed on the coast of California thousands of years before there were any Polynesians taking to sea anywhere near Hawaii. So what it suggests is that if the driftwood redwoods can make it to Hawaii, then some poor schmuck Native American fisherman might have also gone the other direction, which is also, again, much more likely of a scenario for those early contacts than for people who to come over and then name things after things that they found there and then go back, and then it's that big. And there's been no genetic evidence of that connection yet.
Right.
However,
but there's interesting stuff.
However, We did find something interesting about Clovis culture this past year. Clovis culture was sort of at one point considered the earliest Native Americans. They had these tools that you could, big hunting tools for big game, and then they just disappeared. And they thought, oh, the Clovis culture died out. The people died out. Like something, climate event happened. And this is the Younger Dryas, big climate event. But what they've discovered now is that those people survived. They just stopped hunting big game because big game was gone. And that's when you see this giant uptick in fishing. Because the fish, and if you look at the animals that survived, the big predators that survived, they were also ones that could hunt fish, like bears. Bears survived Younger Dryas in North America, wherein a lot of big predators were falling off because they fished. And it turns out, so did Clovis culture. They took their big spear tips and were like, don't need that. Started crafting smaller tips, but things that were better for getting fish. So it's not no longer a fall of a civilization concept, but more of just a technology transition due to climate change.
So much. I love it. I don't know. There's so much more coming too. As we start looking for the different technologies and different evidence in the fossil record, like we're going to find all sorts of things. Going to stop for a second and say, if you just tuned in, this is This Week in Science. We are reviewing 2023 with our annual countdown of the science news stories that we really liked the best. If you love this show, please head over to TWIS.org and consider clicking on that Patreon link and supporting us as a patron of the show. If you choose $10 or more a month, we will thank you by name at the end of the show. And there are lots of other fun little rewards for your support, in addition to being able to know that you're supporting the most awesome science podcast live stream show that's out there. Dun, dun, dun. Also, if you can't do that, you can just help us get more subscribers. That would be fantastic. Share today. All right. I'm going to come on back right now, and we are going to head to number 5.
Number 5. Get some animal news. Number 5 is all about animal cognition. You guessed it. Animals are smart and they're more aware of themselves than we thought. That's all. We can move on. No, I'm kidding. There were a lot of mirror tests this year. There was a lot of studies about animal awareness and intelligence and all sorts of things. But in particular, there were quite a few stories about mirror tests, which roosters, mice, and cleaner wrasse, type of fish, all were able to recognize themselves in a mirror via the stereotypical mirror test, which is where you put a smudge on them, and then they kind of they see where the smudge is via a mirror, and then they try to wipe it off on themselves. So they understand what I see in that mirror is happening to me over here. I will throw out there, a couple of years ago, we had a story about the mirror test on monkeys and how the test itself may be flawed because the way that we express sense of self may not be how animals express sense of self. And so to make that assumption, it's a pretty big assumption. Also, assuming that an animal understands how a mirror works is not the same as understanding they have a sense of self. So are you testing that they know what a mirror is, or are you testing that they have a sense of self? So It's complicated, but I think you can very confidently say that these animals are smart and we're able to make several connections between, I see this thing in the mirror, let me try to wipe it off on myself. So definitely that means they understand that there's something, that they have a physical body and that there is something that they can do about it, right? And they understand there's a representation in the mirror. So that is something that for a long time we had only attributed to humans. And then there were some exceptions. Humans and. And now, before we know it, it's going to be who doesn't, which animals don't. Which, if a cleaner wrasse, which is the evolutionarily first vertebrate, they have it, is that something that is conserved throughout evolutionary history? I don't know.
What I think the cleaner rats, they they changed the mirror test a little bit and used photographs, and so they found that the fish were able to recognize themselves in the photographs. And so, like you said,
Wow.
it's this identification of self versus other, which is really important for cognition, and especially also for social species. It makes some really interesting.
I so don't understand though, because I'm convinced that if I didn't have a mirror,
You
I would
wouldn't
not
know
recognize
yourself.
myself in a photograph. Like if I'd never
Right.
seen like how is this? What is that?
Well, they
connection?
did some training, and they were probably able to.
Right. Yeah. So they have to do all sorts of conditioning first. So yeah, that's the other question: is if you found a
Cheating.
human who's never seen their own reflection, would they pass the mirror
Recognize
test?
himself in a photo. Oh yeah, that one's me. I can tell because I have eyes up
Not
here.
Well,
and the
they're
mouth.
conditioned to it, probably.
Yeah.
You'd have to give a mirror for a while. And
Yeah.
then you'd have to kind of be like, okay, so I saw that when I move, that thing moves over there.
Yeah.
I'm experiencing this with my baby right now.
Yeah.
He's like
Yeah.
very focused on mirrors, and I can't help but wonder, like, do you know that's you? Because he'll also like look at me in the mirror and look at me in real life. And
I
look at
can
me
be like, hey, now
that
there's
it?
two of you. Yeah.
And we know from, like you said, past tests that that what is a mirror? What is this thing? Cats are just like, I don't even care. And so you have to figure out a way to make the cats care about the test, right?
Right.
So
They
it's all about
just
figuring out how to make it work. At the end of the year, the study with the mirror test with the mice was really interesting because they could the mice, if they were raised in isolation away from other mice, they would not recognize themselves in a mirror. And this is after training to learn what the mirror did and to recognize, this is what a mirror reflects things. But they couldn't get it if they were raised in isolation. They could only get it if they were raised in a social group. So that in itself was just fascinating and gives huge questions related to like the development of the brain and self-identification and socialization, and how important, certain how could this understanding, figuring it out with mice lead to us looking at changes in the hippocampus and other areas of the brain that might help us understand disorders of brain wiring that make people more or less social, right?
Right. And then like if you associate it with intelligence, would you say that mouse is less intelligent than the mouse that was raised in a social setting? No.
Just
didn't
have the same enrichment.
Yeah.
Right. They aren't conditioned to do the same thing that the other one's at, or recognize the same things that the other one has. Right. So this is where animal intelligence and gets murky, because exactly what you're saying. Like if cats
nature thing.
if cats don't give a care about other cats ever.
Yeah.
How are you going to condition them to care about a mirror? And then you can't measure their intelligence. But that doesn't mean that a cat is less smart than
maybe
the
differently
rat.
smart, differently, differently adapted. There are different things that are important. Yeah.
Like, so try to put a cat in a maze. I don't know. They'll maybe figure it out.
They'll just lie down.
Sure. Game the system. So I think, like I said, animals are smarter than we thought and are more aware than we thought. That's like the bottom line always, and I can't wait to learn more about that in the coming year.
So much. Should we move on to number 4?
Yeah. Number 4. Medicine.
Which you really wanted to talk about, Justin. So.
But I kind of think I did. Okay, so this was a very, very wild year. First of all, there's this amazing stuff that has been discovered for the gut microbiota brain connection in relation to another subject that we're going to talk about later, neurodegenerative. I can't even say words. Neurodegenerative diseases, but we'll save that one. We'll save that because we have a teaser. We have a spoiler. We have a little section on that later. This one I found very interesting. The CDC, Center for Diseases Control, did a study on depression and mortality and found that amongst the severely depressed, smoking was better than exercise, just barely, at reducing overall mortality.
Oh, right.
Other factors, being wealthy, helped reduce the risk of death. I think that could probably be taken everywhere. But for some reason, amongst the severely depressed, smoking was actually shown to be beneficial. Now, counter that with them also finding mortality estimates that don't ask whether or not people are smokers are likely massively increasing the calculated death risk of non-smokers. So if you've ever seen a mortality risk of your age bracket or your demographic, your profession or whatever it is, and you don't smoke, you've got many extra years that should be thrown onto that, because overall smoking still kills you, but it kills you less than anything else if you're severely depressed already. So take that for whatever it's worth. This was an amazing year for, like we were sort of teasing about earlier, for finding applications for all of the knowledge that we have gained from the genomic field. We have pluripotent stem cells that are now being designed as universal donor, so that they can. There are so many alleles and things and stuff you have to keep it, like you need your own stem cells basically, so you don't get kind of like an organ rejection, because it's foreign tissue, so it doesn't get attacked by your T cells. It has to be your own cells, which means you have to have a budget to create your own pluripotent cells. And now they've gotten to the point where, well, we can develop this line that's going to be good for 2% of people, and this other line will be good for 3% of people. And, stepwise trying to get this sorted out. But this I think it's Sana Biotech, they're a California company. They have developed a universal donor stem cell, meaning that they can take this and apply a stem cell therapy to anyone.
It's wild.
Very wild. Then what do we even need that? Because then Harvard University is doing this new prime editing, and in their experiments, they managed to replace, I'll just call them defective genes or disease genes, in mice, livers and heart tissue and brain, different parts with different ratios of success in living creatures. So if you have a genetic disease, we're into the future, genetic disease, prime editing can go in and change your DNA to where you don't have the ailment anymore.
And we did have like the first treatments that are gene editing, CRISPR-based treatments that were approved this last year in the UK and the US, which is also pretty amazing.
Yeah. And these are huge breakthroughs in the toolkit. We'll just call it for fighting disease. I mentioned the one where they were altering mRNAs before they encoded into a protein. There's, oh my goodness, there's just so much. There's just so much that is breaking in terms of the research right now. A lot of it AI assisted, a lot of it having to do with genomics, and a lot of it targeted at neurodegenerative diseases.
Yeah. There was also the artificial kidney that was developed by UCSF. So there's maybe a new bioreactor. It was implanted, I think, into pigs. But this artificial kidney project is something that they're really optimistic about, and they published on this. And there was a first actual implantation of a pig kidney into a human, and reported that the human has been living for 2 years with the pig kidney which was a pretty big deal this year. So there's some neat stuff happening on that side of stuff.
Yeah. And
I
so
don't know.
before we head to the next one, oh, go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no, yeah, and I was going to say toward the end of the year, I reported on another story. These little tiny biobots that it's kind of stem cell based, but researchers in the group that had done the frog cell xenobot research have developed what they call anthrobots, and they took tracheal cells and they basically turned them into little medical robots without any genetic modifications, and could be used in regenerative medicine. These little anthrobots could be created from adult human cells and could create specific tools. And they showed in their study that they could encourage the growth of neurons across a damaged region of tissue in a dish. Wild stuff.
Yeah.
Biobots.
And we didn't specifically mention microbiome, but it's playing a role in some of this. They've discovered that there is something there are early signals that they can find of Parkinson's disease that are already present in the gut microbiota of people with sleep behavior disorder. Sleep behavior disorder, they're finding then, of course, has this component of altered microbiome, which in a certain percentage of those patients then manifests into Parkinson's disease. Now, this is also, this is sort of an interesting one too, because then Alzheimer's disease, they're finding the central nervous system, which extends actually from your esophagus to all the way through your gut. There is neuronal tissue. They have found connections there. That it may actually, Alzheimer's might actually start in the gut and then migrate. The manifestations that we see later in the central nervous system, the spinal, and then the column, these things begin much earlier, and that there's evidence of them in neuronal tissue within the gut lining. And then there's all sorts of stuff finding that antacid use can be correlated to dementia.
Right.
So
questionable.
That doesn't mean that antacids are causing dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, getting related into these issues, neurodegenerative disease. But that it may be also just an early indicator that the reason people are getting prescribed antacids is because the microbiome has gone through a drastic change, because that's an early signal of a neurodegenerative disease that's on its way, that might be 4 or 5 years out.
Is there any chance that's because stomach acid issues is something that can be easily fixed, but unfixed can cause other health problems, and so people are just living longer that otherwise would have died from dumb stomach stuff?
No, in this,
you know what I mean?
Right. So what was interesting in this study is that it was they were looking at the onset of being prescribed antacids to a diagnosis. And what it found was it's that scale, that window sort of followed whether you started in your 40s, 50s, or 60s, the chance within 5 years that you were going to get a diagnosis was much higher. And so what that means is that's the part that sort of indicates that, you're treating a symptom that seems like it's completely removed from all other disease that you might accumulate later, but it's sort of tracking behind. It's the sort of leading indicator of a dementia that increased risk. So
interesting.
So you can be like, oh, don't take antacids, they'll give you dementia. And maybe because I haven't really ruled out causality that way. But it's much more likely, based on other things that we're seeing, that there are changes in microbiota, there are changes in gut, because the neuronal tissue is lining your gut, that it's actually an early indicator, and that you need to start looking at higher testing levels, more watchful, looking for signs earlier post a need for antacid prescription, which is such a strange thing, because that feels like such a thing like you would take, oh, I've got a little upset stomach, I'll take a thing, whatever. But if you're doing it consistently, it may be the leading indicator of something greater, some greater change that's taking place.
And this talk of the microbiome, the gut to brain connection, does lead into our number 3 topic.
Ooh, number three.
Neuroscience. A whole bunch of stuff in neuroscience this year. It was cool. And it kind of got at a lot of this, I guess, the brain's immune system, how the brain cleans itself up, the importance of microglia and astrocytes. And so the relationship between like the immune system outside of the blood-brain barrier and inside the blood-brain barrier, and how things get across that gap to be able to actually heal the brain. Researchers started looking at a technology that would like vibrate the blood-brain barrier so that would kind of break it apart for a period of time to allow therapeutic molecules to get in to be able to affect the brain and maybe help with stuff. They started finding also how important epigenetic signals are for aging in the brain, and that to kind of create younger neurons that you can reprogram or kind of fix the mRNA in the neurons to get neurons to be younger feeling. One of the neat things related to the immune system is that for years, researchers have been looking at what are called tunneling nanotubes, TNTs, and they help to create pathways for intercellular communication. So sending proteins and other things back and forth. But it was also suggested that they might be involved in helping neurons kind of clean out their garbage. And so a study this last year showed that these tunneling nanotubes are actually really important for taking the toxic protein aggregates, alpha-synuclein, out of cells, out of the neurons, and into microglia. So taking out some of these toxic proteins that lead to Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, Huntington's, and get them into the microglia, the astrocytes, parasites, and help clean them out. It was also shown how important the health of our mitochondria are in making sure that our neurons are working healthily and really well. Mitochondria have been shown that if we could fix the mitochondria and a lot of those, the ATP production, that very often that can keep neurons going longer. And a lot of neurodegenerative issues are to do with the loss of mitochondria in our nerves as we age.
Yeah, and there was also a study this year about methods to replace mitochondria.
Yeah.
And so it's we're so close. We just all got to live a little longer, and then we'll live forever.
Yeah. They gave a molecule called clotho to monkeys, and it gave monkeys a nice little brain boost to fight aging a little bit. We don't know if it'll work with humans in the same way, but clotho, it worked nicely for monkeys. So monkeys had smarter brains longer with this little protein. There's one story that was super fun this year. We always talk about synapses as being the important points of communication for the brain. So neurons connecting with each other at synapses. But there's this idea that was developed this year, looked at C. elegans. And what they showed is that there's kind of more extracellular movement of information, short distance. Again, the microglia, the glia that are around the neurons, assist in a lot of this transfer of information, but there's more of a wireless nerve network, like Wi-Fi is what they call it, Wi-Fi for neurons. And they have a map of it that's been unveiled. So not just synapses are important for long distance communication in our nervous system. There's also this other system that's outside the synapses that has an impact on upregulation, downregulation. Oh, look, the brain's more complicated once again than we gave it credit for. We try to simplify it.
Wait,
But
is the brain smarter than we thought it was? Also, like, every year we find out the brain is way more clever.
There's more stuff in there. Yeah. Researchers use deep brain stimulation to help people suffering from traumatic brain injury. So people who had been car accidents, significant, incidents that led to loss of motor ability, loss of memory that were, really significantly impacted. They found that deep brain stimulation was actually able to get people to the point where they could once again read a book and follow the plot. Remember, go take a class, learn a language, leave the house. So it's a very small sample set, but this deep brain stimulation really helped the areas of the brain that they were stimulating to regain function, which is super cool. We had a brain cell atlas that was released for human brain cells. We're mapping all the different brain cells that we can find in the human brain. There was also a mouse brain cell atlas that was released that had so many. Have we really identified all of the cell types? I don't know. Lots of mouse brain stuff going on. And then the big one this last year that was pretty cool were animal cells and human cells to create brain organoids so that we can study brains, not in brains. But then the brain in a dish. There are lots of brain in the dish stuff going on, playing Pong and creating computers pretty much from or incorporating brain organoids with technology so that the brain organoid reservoir can then do artificial intelligence type computing. And the most recent study was published in the beginning. Yeah, right, that's the question. Is it? Was it what? Yeah. So potentially it adds a little more biological messiness to the structured aspect of current artificial intelligence algorithms, models, and silicon-based systems.
Because to be clear, when we're talking about not artificial intelligence at this point, we're talking about the billions of years of evolution that led to a human brain that really only started to figure stuff out at a high level over the last couple thousand years.
Yeah.
It's just other than animal intelligence, we should just leave humans out of it for a minute.
Just leave them out. There's no reason.
The whole rolling the dice and having a hormone controlled user interface for a brain to function is just been the way it's we've just sort of removed some of those. We have all this stimuli for the brain that's just dedicated to the function of the body in procreation and feeding itself, getting resource. If we leave all of that out, my goodness, the brain can do a lot of things that we have barely tapped.
Right. But again, there are these parts of it that we haven't really understood. So if we start creating these bio computing systems, how do we maintain them? We got to maintain those mitochondria, right? You have to maintain how do you make sure that they're signaling correctly? Do you need to have supporting cells like the microglia? And do you need to take into account some of these extracellular like neuronal Wi-Fi systems that we're just beginning to understand and describe? So how we create these and use them moving forward. Like right now, it's still very simplistic, and we have yet to see where it will go. But yeah, brain in a dish. Now it's turning into brain computer in a dish. Dun, dun, dun. Such exciting stuff. Brains, neuroscience, brain computing. Oh, where are we going to go next? We just have to wait and see.
And the best way to see things is with the James Webb Space Telescope.
Which is
Ooh,
number
two.
Well, to be honest, the only stories that catch my eye from, because I can't look at another picture of something in space.
Wait, what?
I'm sorry. I've seen too many colorizations and mock-ups and things. I can't tell the difference anymore. However, the thing that always catches my eye and has been thrown at my eye over and over and over again last year. Oh, here's a giant galaxy that's so old that it makes the universe older. Right? So many times this has been founded again. Hey, an even older, bigger galaxy that shouldn't be there was found again. Is it the story that I read last week or the month before that? Do they just keep rehashing this same story? I get it's important. No, it's a different story every time. It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. That's hilarious.
It kind of is. Is it like we're talking about? Oh, there's an organoid that was hard to spot that we found, and it does a thing. And there's these tubes from cells and neurons that are doing stuff, and there's all these tiny things. I get we didn't understand the tiny things. I thought that we had figured out the universe, the big thing that we look at with the telescopes. Turns out we were way off. We're older, bigger. Now the Big Bang has to be longer ago, or maybe it didn't happen. What's going on, Kiki?
Yeah, that's the new one, right? Maybe the Big Bang didn't even happen, or maybe there were multiple Big Bangs. I don't know. Yeah. I love the fact that this new evidence that we knew this telescope, because of the way it was going to be looking at the universe, was going to be full of new information. And we didn't really expect this kind of an upset, though, or at least it wasn't publicly talked about a lot. But the idea that there were so many things fully baked, like the Milky Way solar system, like really close to when we think the Big Bang happened. Like that's it. It's a little textbooks must be rewritten that we're looking at right now.
It is a textbook, needs to be rewritten, but it's also like, I think, such a big win for the experimental science community, because we've got and I love my physicists. I love my theoretical physicists out there. They're forging tremendous paths through modeled universes with the mathematics, complex mathematics, simple mathematics. They put all the kinds of mathematics in there, and they get these models, and they can discover all sorts of things about the from quantum to the but none of them went like, oh, hey, I added it up. Oh, yeah, we've only counted half the universe is age so far. Like, nobody was saying this. Well, maybe somebody, but we didn't get to hear about it.
And it just means that we need more experiments. We need more detectors. We need more telescopes. We need to keep looking at things, and it also suggests that maybe our idea of life in the universe and the timing of possible evolution of life. I mean, James Webb has found the oldest organic molecules far, far away.
Yeah. And then all the water that you were talking about in the floaty space dust, the pre-solar intergalactic space dust, whatever the Drake equation was,
right? Change
forget it. Throw it out. The number of habitable, the time of evolutionary possibilities, the building blocks we didn't even talk about building blocks. We discovered organic building blocks are everywhere. Water is everywhere. Time is much deeper. Planets are everywhere. They're probably all wet. Life likely is abundant. The only problem is it's still very far away in both time and
Yes.
space. 'Cause
Absolutely.
kinda
Yes,
how that
that's it.
works,
That's
but
that's the big thing. But what's not far away in time and space is what's right here that we're creating and was what we call the number one story of
Number
2023.
one.
number one.
Artificial intelligence. We can't deny it, everyone. 2023 was the year of everybody becoming aware of these machine learning algorithms and what we call artificial intelligence in a more colloquial way. But it was the year of controversy. It was the year of people realizing of the multiple uses of this technology. It was the year of predictions. It's the year of really starting to take a look at our technology that we are developing and question how it's going to affect us, humanity and culture, as we go into the future. So, we've got AI, deepfakes, right? So there's the question of media, social media, people whose
Did
voices
the
that can
Pope
be
wear a puffy coat? Yeah,
right.
did that actually happen?
Right. There are accounts all over that are deep fake accounts of celebrities,
Yeah.
doing things. There, early in the year, January, AI was reported on that from Microsoft that after just 3 seconds of exposure to an audio file, their learning model could replicate your voice. That's their Valley algorithm. We found out AI can write science papers, but not really well, and it makes up a lot of stuff and references. And so, maybe you shouldn't just depend on AI for that kind of stuff. But
That's
it's
the
Oh,
thing about AI.
lawyers have been
It
getting
can't
in
go,
trouble all the
oh,
time.
follow-up question. Oh, I don't understand this part. Oh, can you re-explain? No, it
Yeah.
just connects dots.
So
Yeah.
so there is a way to use it properly,
Sure.
but it's
Anything can be
not
used well or not.
it's
But
not in writing. It's in interpreting the data that
Mhm.
you say, here's the only data to look at.
Don't make anything up.
Yeah.
Inference. It's great.
No guessing.
Yeah.
And then
Only what I've given you here. Do not make anything new.
yeah. And so using it that way and actually making stuff new. One of the things that is a very healthy thing that I think I already mentioned is starting using AI to create proteins
Mhm.
where you don't just like predict the way that this encoding mRNA can get folded into the protein and then, well, we've been doing that for predicting proteins that can be made, predicting these, and then try to find a use for these. Instead, it says, hey, here's the function I want this protein to have. Here's the binding sites I need. Here's the things I want it to interact with. Build it for me. And it's like reverse engineer building it. It's also, AI is also doing predictive things for looking at basically what they're calling the fingerprint of other proteins so that it can tell where those binding sites are based on its components and guess how it's folded and guess how it is constructed, so that basically what the AI is creating now is that toolkit again that we keep talking about. I'm thinking of in the clinical sense, that toolkit for creating druggable targets where no druggable target existed before,
Right.
and inventing the drug that can do it
Yeah.
by AI itself.
Yeah.
Not guess and check, not running through, but designing specific, targeted, without off effects, ways to target illnesses, ways to target other proteins to create effects in the body. Now, that's the good side.
Yeah, and I love that, the prediction also of gene modifications. So we understand how a gene and its amino acid sequence uh, can lead to a certain protein structure and understand how that protein structure will have certain functions and interactions with transporters, with other proteins, with, receptors, etc. If you change it, what'll happen? Instead of doing the experiments, the AI can actually help you predict when it's going to be bad, when it's going to be good, when it's going to be helpful, when it's not going to be useful. There's lots of great stuff in it.
And you also said something really interesting there that just occurred to me as you said it, is that, okay, so now we've back engineered the function we want the protein to have. Now we know, therefore, the structure and the genetic elements that protein is going to need to create. And we can actually go back and say, well, then what synthetic organism could we make that could produce a large amount of these, right? And then we're back to the synthetic biology again.
Yes.
And now
it comes full circle.
We're creating a synthetic biology to create our engineered targeted back engineered targeting. Oh my goodness, yeah. And then you could you no longer, but of course you need all the data. You need all the data about what you need to target and how these things interact. And guess who's helping with that? AI.
AI
is taking the massive data collected from single cell genome sequencing and mRNA captures and figuring out what's in play, what's interacting, what's affecting what, to the point where then we can do the targeting and then back to the thing that can produce the targeted thing, and then the organism that can mass produce the thing that's the target.
Yeah. But it's also helping us understand more about ourselves, and so kind of related to neuroscience with the algorithms that we're using and the systems that we are putting into place. We're teaching AI to recognize language and to understand the underpinnings of language, and that's coming back and cycling back into teaching us about how language is created in our own brains and impacts our thoughts and how we are able to think if we are trained in a particular language growing up. And it's also helping us interact with animals in the environment and ecosystems. Maybe like they had a conversation with a whale recently, thanks to AI. They were able to figure out certain diphthongs and and vowels in whale sounds. And it's also helping us understand syntax and information that is contained in bird song. So maybe
that's what AI is good at, right? Is pattern recognition, which is basically what that is. So that they're not really learning the language of the animal. They're recognizing sonic patterns and repeating them back. So
but what is language but we're repeating patterns that have some context?
I would argue language is a lot more complicated than that, actually. But
and it's why
there's a basis in it, but it's
and it's also why on the Turing test and other tests given to these algorithms, humans are still better at being human than algorithms. We're still beating them, not by much, at some of the the high level GPTs these days, but yeah, humans are still doing all right. We're still more variable. We're adaptable. We're not as limited as some of these learning models are to date. So we're still better at being human. We're better at humor. We're better at being comedians than robots. We're better at being us than AI. And so that is the good news.
Yeah, but
have you ever there was one other AI story I wanted to mention from this year too that I thought was really interesting, which is that kids can judge how relatively smart certain AIs are. Like they think Alexa's smarter than a Roomba, for example. But they also generally think that AIs deserve kindness. You shouldn't yell at them. You shouldn't swear at them. You shouldn't hit them. And that the younger children believe that more than adolescents. Now, is that just because like you lose your desire to be nice to AI as you age, or is it because younger children are being raised around machines in a way that the older children had not, right? So we don't know the difference there.
Because that's tricky right now, because like everything that we're talking about, I mean, it's built off of the entire from the first computer up to the just mathematics and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, there's a history. We all stand on the shoulders of giants. Everything we're talking about launched this last year. Like everything we're talking about is making these discoveries in this last year is on the is the first round of the AI at the beginning of the year, and then what AI was doing by the end of the first year.
That it was
is
really
already
loose.
revolutionarily different.
And that's why we were talking about whether or not to make AI number one this year, and about how, AI is going to be a big deal moving forward too. But the difference is that in 2022, you didn't have to question every piece of text or every image that came across your desk on the internet and go, is this real?
Yeah.
And you didn't have the resources that AI gives you to be able to process data, right?
Yeah.
So there's the good and the bad, but it definitely feels like 2023 is the year that suddenly access to AI and AI tools exploded, and it changed the way things will be in the future.
Moving forward.
And I just want to point out that
agreed.
Anybody who didn't think curated media wasn't already a form of deep fake before, what was it you said, Pope and a puffy jack or whatever?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Like in my mind, there is almost no difference between the deep fake and the curated version of media that we've been seeing anyway.
Oh, you mean like how reality TV isn't real? And stuff like that?
Or like how celebrities present themselves as
sure.
Like.
But the difference is that someone could deep fake your face onto something now, Justin.
Or the P. Diddy R. Kelly spin, whatever. Like there's things.
This year, this year though, we had
already fake.
The Screenwriters Guild, the Actors Guild, and their strike that went on so long this year. One of the big sticking points was their likeness. And it became a huge issue this year because of deepfakes, because of AI, because of the potential for the studios to have the rights to a person's, an actor's likeness, and then go on to create other programming where they're not paying them anymore. They're just using their likeness because it's been signed away in a contract. And so it became like, we've been talking about that possibility for a long time. And this year it really, really hit. So, yeah.
I mean, what's to stop you, Justin, from not accidentally agreeing to a term and condition on your Facebook account or whatever online, and then accidentally now your visage can be used for things, right?
Can I tell you this? Can I just point out
perpetuity?
You already describing the music industry. You are already describing the pre any of that recording industry, film industry. You're actually already describing how it's been, and which is what's so wild about it. Like there have been a couple of people. You remember when Prince changed his name to a symbol,
right? So
that was a move. To reclaim his identity so that he owned his recordings and that he could profit off them. There were recording artists who made record companies multi-millions of dollars.
Absolutely, because they signed away
nothing out of it. Yeah,
right.
Because they've already been like.
But there were also limitations to it. Whereas in the past, once you're done recording albums, you're done recording albums. But if you accidentally allowed that recording company to have rights to your voice and style forever, they could make new songs with your voice that's been produced through an algorithm. Yeah.
Which is only slightly different than the way it was before.
Yeah. So, but it's just another step. But
what they're addressing, I agree. Yeah. But I think what it's forcing us to do, because of the accelerated nature of that, and that, is it's forcing them, artists and industries, to reassess how business has been done, because it's like, they're going to exploit me and use my songs and have other artists record it and and come out with 50 different remastered albums that I'm not part of, that I don't see any money for. But that was going to take my lifetime to get exploited. And you're right. Now
But
it's
now it's
vaudeville.
everyone. Now it's
vaudeville.
everyone. It's everyone. It's everywhere, and
Yeah.
we all need to be aware of how AI is going to. And now we are aware.
But this
It is
also
part of everyone's life now.
This was also this is funny. This is the conversation that was taking place when the vaudevillian juggling family was going to be on film, was going to be filmed for the first time. Because then their fear was, well, they film this once and they can show it over and over again, and we don't have to show up to town and put on a show anymore.
Right.
This we've been here before. We just need to look back and see how things were addressed and sorted then, and do the same or improve, because we've actually seen it before. It's not completely new.
Yeah, it's more just that the speed at which all of this has become available and the access that the internet provides, which is good overall, means this has to get figured out kind of quickly. There's
kind of like climate change. Huh.
Yeah. Hopefully
Parallel.
we'll act on it faster than we do on climate change. But yes, I think it's interesting that in the space of 12 months, we've seen a complete turnover in how this all works. And so, yes, it's requiring a lot of conversations to happen that might have happened over 10 or 20 years. And now it's happening over 12 months. It's wild.
It is. And I do want to take this wild moment to remind you that this is This Week in Science. We have just finished our top 11 countdown. If you're listening, remember that Blair made a calendar for 2023. And if you haven't gotten it yet, you can head to TWIS.org and click on the Zazzle link. And that will take you to our Zazzle store, where you can get your own TWIS 2024 calendar. Full of Blair's art, and enjoy that for the year. We've been through a little ups and downs with that calendar, but it's finally back. It's there in the store, and you can get it.
It's there.
It's there.
Believe it or not.
Yeah. So let's end this show with a few of those little MVPs that Blair wanted to bring, that are kind of animal corner areas of conversation.
Yeah, so I brought 3 reminders of some of my favorite Animal Corner stories of the year. 2 that I brought before I bowed out for the year, but one that surfaced while I was on leave. So first, I just love that there was all sorts of research on feces and fur found in the Pacific Northwest woods to decide that, yes, Bigfoot is not real, and in fact is a black bear, or many, many black bears, more likely. So DNA analysis says you're seeing black bears, which, if you saw that video that I think was also this year of the sun bear, I think it was, in a zoo in, gosh, I think it was in China. I don't remember, but bears stand weird sometimes. And so there was this whole hubbub that the sun bear was a human in a suit. But really, it was just a bear being a bear. And in fact, it seems like Bigfoots could also be bears being a bear. And people seeing them through the trees and going, what is that thing that is standing like a human? Nope, just a black bear.
Just bear.
My other favorite story that I did, actually, I think it was on the show that I did with Brian when it was all Animal Corner show. It was all about dinosaur lips. Turns out theropod dinosaurs may have lips. They've decided that because of a look at tooth enamel. Tooth enamel is very thin on theropod dinosaurs. And so if there was no lip to cover up those teeth, they would damage, desiccate, and wear very quickly. So the expectation is that, in fact, T-Rex has got big old lips. And
Wild.
This one just came out in November. I don't remember who talked about it on the show, but it wasn't me. Oh, it was you.
I did.
Yes. It was Kiki. Talked all about I guess nobody's really watched one particular type of bat copulate before, because they were all surprised to find out that the serotine bat, Eptisicus serotinus, They have copulation without penetration, which is not something that you are used to seeing in a mammal. In fact, non-penetrative sex has never been documented in a mammal before this. It seems like their very large copulatory organ, their very large phallus, is in fact so large that it would not fit into a female, and instead it just
So
kind
wild.
of matches up for the transfer of sperm, similar to how birds and lizards copulate, similar to what is called a cloacal kiss. But since they do not have a cloaca, it is not that. So I guess we need a new term for it. So I'm interested to find out what they decide to call this in the textbooks in the future. But yeah, they also evolutionarily, I want to know why this happened. Why would you have
it's
a
because
phallus
the bats
so-
all subscribed to an ad they found in the back of a magazine, and it
Right.
turned out it worked. It turned out it worked.
Yeah, and
a little too well.
and it lasted longer than 4 hours, and they didn't go to the doctor. But
No.
no, evolutionarily, there has to be a reason that their phallus would be so large that it wouldn't fit into the female appropriately. Like, why? There has to be
Yeah.
a reason, and I
Well,
really
there are
want to find out why.
Yeah, there are hypotheses about the females themselves. They have a tail membrane, which the researchers think the females might actively use to protect themselves from males that they don't want to mate with. And so maybe it has to do with an adaptation of the organ to push the membrane out of the way to gain access to copulation.
Yeah.
But my favorite quote from the interview and the materials related to this research from the researcher is that, quote, "We are trying to develop a bat porn box, which will be like an aquarium with cameras everywhere."
Great.
Okay.
You go,
That-
researchers.
that
Figure it
we-
all out.
Yes, and once you figure that out, now we need to figure out what other bats do this. Is it really only this one bat, or is it a larger pattern?
Larger.
So I'm so curious. Hopefully more to come on bat sex methods in 2024. You'll hear about
I
it
feel
here.
like
More
if I- maybe-
cloacal kisses in 2024 for everyone.
I feel like maybe both sexes of the bat both made a wish. Both wishes came true at the same time. And just
This is how the cards have fallen.
this sort of selection into this awkward situation.
Mhm. And I think this does it for our wonderful
really-
review of 2023. So if, people say, "Oh, what a terrible year. Thank goodness we're in a new year," whatever. There were so many great things that came out of 2023 in the sciences. And so I hope to continue in 2024 bringing positivity and optimism about at least, the curiosity we have in the world and the things that humans can accomplish in looking more deeply into the universe we inhabit.
On the other hand, too, 2024 could be so bad that you'll actually miss 2023, and it won't be a year you wanted to get past. You're like, oh, let it be 2023 some more.
We don't know
That's-
yet. We
That's
have
the
no
optimistic view. You could always say like, oh, it could be really worse than 2023.
Oh my gosh, yeah, but that's
2023
what
had a lot of good
we're going to be
things.
talking about 2024 tomorrow night, which is Justin's morning, Thursday morning for Justin, doing our prediction show for 2024. Every year we do predictions. Hopefully Blair will be able to join us. We don't know. It all depends. But right now, I just want to say so good to have both of you back and to be talking with you. I'm really glad that we could do this show together. And thanks everyone who did show up for this show that was not at the regular time, who's been watching live right now. Thank you for being here in the chat room and watching.
Missed you all.
Yeah. And for all the people who do help us out every year, Thank you, Fada, for all of your help on social media and the YouTube channel, show notes. Gord, Arnlore, others who help keep the chat rooms nice, happy places to be. Identity4 for recording the shows. I know this show particularly was an off time, so I've got it covered. Rachel, thank you for helping to edit the show. And as always, our Patreon sponsors, I have to say thank you so much for helping us get through the year and for supporting this show. Thank you to Aaron Anathema, Arthur Kepler, Craig Potts, Mary Gertz, Teresa Smith, Richard Badge, Bob Coles, Kent Northcote, Rick Loveman, George Corris, Pierre Velazarb, John Ratnaswamy, Carl Kornfeld, Chris Wozniak, Vegard Shefstad, Donathan Stiles, a.k.a. Don Stylo, Ali Coffin, Reagan, Shubrew, Sarah Forfar, Don Mundus, PIG, Stephen Alberon, Daryl Myshak, Andrew Swanson, Fred S104, Skylu, Paul Ronovich, Kevin Reardon, Noodles, Jack, Brian Carrington, David E. Youngblood, Sean Clarence Lamb, John McKee, Greg Riley, Mark Hessenblow, Steve Leisman, a.k.a. Zima, Ken Hayes, Howard Tan, Christopher Rappin, Richard, Brendan Minish, Johnny Gridley, Remy Day, G. Burton Lattimore, Flying Out, Christopher Dreyer, Greg Briggs, John Atwood, Rudy Garcia, Dave Wilkinson, Rodney Lewis, Paul, Rick Ramus, Philip Shane, Kurt Larson, Craig Landon, Sue Doster, Jason Olds, Dave Neighbor, Eric Knapp, Lon Makes, EO, Adam Mishkan, Kevin Parachan, Aaron Luthen, Bob Calder, Marjorie, Paul D. Disney, David Simmerly, Patrick Pecoraro, Tony Steele. Thank you for all of your support on Patreon. And for those of you out there who do want to help support us for the year to come, you can head over to twis.org, click on the Patreon link, and you'll find information there about how to support us through Patreon. There's also our Zazzle store as well if you want to purchase merchandise like our calendar for 2024 that is available, like I said. And again, tomorrow night, we're predicting the year ahead, so don't miss it.
Because we will be back tomorrow, Wednesday, January 10th, which already it is today now where I am. 8 p.m. Pacific time or 5 a.m. Central European time on Thursday. Broadcasting live from our Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook channels.
Do you want to listen to us as a podcast? Just search for This Week in Science wherever podcasts are found. If you enjoyed the show, get your friends to subscribe as well.
For more information on anything you've heard here today, show notes and links to stories will be available on our website, www.twis.org, where you can also sign up for newsletters so you can find out when the next show will be.
Yeah.
You can also contact us directly. Email Kirsten at kirsten@thisweekinscience.com, Justin at twisminin@gmail.com, or me, Blair, at blairbaz@twis.org. Just be sure to put TWIS, TWIS, in the subject line, or your email will be spam filtered into last year, 2023.
Don't forget it. Yeah.
You can also hit us up on the, do we call it Twitter still?
I don't know.
Gosh, 2023 had a lot of changes.
I don't know.
Where you can find at TWIS Science, at Dr. Kiki, and at Blair's Menagerie. We love your feedback. If there is a topic you would like us to cover or address, a suggestion for an interview, a haiku that comes to you tonight, please let us know.
We'll be back here tomorrow, and we hope you'll join us again for more great science news.
And if you've learned anything from the show, remember,
it's all in your head.
This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. 'Cause this week's science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth. And I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science.
Pew, 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 pew. This Week in Science. last year in science, next year in science, this year in science. What?
All right. And if you're still tuned in, we are now going to switch over to current science.
What?
We're going to do a whole new episode right here,
Nope.
back to back, because it's
Nope.
now the 10th.
I'm gonna go.
Nope.
What?
We went over our tight 90. We put the show together in the hour before the show. And so we've been here over 3 hours now.
Really?
So after showing, I don't know about that
Time
much, you guys,
flies
right
by when
now.
you're having fun.
Yeah.
My
It
goodness.
does.
I gotta scoot.
Yeah, Blair's got some Bambino probably to go hang out with for a while. Yeah. Ooh, Arn Laura is predicting we'll finally have the universal flu vaccine this year. That would be pretty cool. We got RSV vaccine last year. Who knows? Yeah. And Patrick, you're saying you've missed us. Thank you. We've missed being together and doing this show. And yeah, the temporary part is something that we're trying to work on. So we are discussing how we're going to make this year work with Justin's new work schedule, Blair's work schedule, family schedule, my schedule. We're having conversations. So be ready, and we will let you know ahead of time what will be happening. But we may be changing the time of the show from Wednesday nights.
And it's
We don't-
not because
don't
of
know-
my work schedule. It's because of plate tectonics.
Yes. Yeah. Well, no. A human construct known as time and time zones. That's
Also, when I'm awake and you're awake at the same time.
at the same. Yeah. There's
That's a lot.
activity. Yeah. Circadian rhythms and in synchrony and all that kind of stuff. Family life activities and synchrony. Yeah.
Hey, Patrick P, you got to tell me when you have changed your tectonic plate proximity. Because we won't be that far away.
Right? Is Patrick moving?
I heard a rumor.
You heard I heard a rumor. Eric Knapp, thank you. Yeah, I apologize to everyone for the holidays, but you can't do much about it when you've been hit by a bug virus, etc. in life. And yeah, slowly coming back with my energy levels. I'm probably going to go sit on the couch, lie down on the couch for the next few hours, actually, right now, because this is probably the most standing up and activity that I've had in one period of time for a while. So I got to go rest, but I'm coming back strong, everyone.
Good.
And yeah, tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Pacific time, 5 a.m.
Yeah, I think it's either in
galactic time.
29 hours or 5 hours. I got to figure out we'll look at a clock.
Yeah, and hopefully, Blair, you'll be able to join us. We'll try and make it maybe a tight 60 show so that tomorrow night, so that if that works, I don't know. But we'll do what we can.
I'll do my best. I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, we'll do what we can. But Justin and I will be for sure here tomorrow night, or morning, wherever you are. Next show, and we're crossing our fingers that Blair will be in person as well. But thank you everyone for joining us for this show and being here. And we're so happy I'm happy. I'm hoping I'm talking for Blair and Justin as well. Just so happy to be back doing this because it makes me happy.
Yay.
All right. Yeah. Thanks everyone for your support. Remember, stay happy, stay healthy, stay safe, and stay clever and stay lucky. Woohoo!
Gotta stay lucky.
I predict we'll see you soon.